Those who can see the invisible can create the impossible. I saw this quote about 10 years ago on a church sign, believe it or not, of all places. And I have definitely carried it with me throughout the years, kind of as a mantra, to my own life. Finding that quote was a bit of, it was like the universe, one of those things where everything links up. It was like the universe, tapping me on the shoulder and saying, see, it makes sense, doesn't it? And it was definitely a moment of self-discovery, and it really helped me in my self-definition. And in the definition of my life. Sometimes something or somebody will come along and they will, just a way that they express themselves, or an experience that they explain to you, or a beautiful quote that they have, or a beautiful song that they've put out. Suddenly you have something with which to relate and with which to define yourself and your life and where you're coming from and where you're heading. And that quote was one of those things for me. Those who can see the invisible can create the impossible. Because I realized that throughout my entire life, that's who I had been. It wasn't just that I had this knack for spirituality, that I had this knack for looking beyond the veil or looking beyond what my physical eyes could see. It wasn't just that I had the knack for it, because we all have the knack for it. It was that I searched for it. I reached for it. I didn't let go of it. That connection with God, with the universe, with the source, with the energy, with the essence, whatever you want to call it, with the higher self, with the holy, with the Trinity, whatever works for you. That connection was there for me. And it, as long as I can remember, it has always been there for me. And I have my moments where it seems the connection isn't there. And I'll definitely tell you that the connection is always there. You never lose it. It's just the way we perceive it. Sometimes we think we've lost it. When you're in your darkest and angriest and most sad of hours, you think there's no God. You think there's no higher being, no source. You think ultimately what you're thinking is that you have no power, that you are nothing. And this disconnect is done by us. It is not done by the greater power. In the actuality, and this is where we get into reality versus actuality, because everyone's reality is a little different. The reality may be that you're alone, you have no one, you don't even have yourself. But the actuality is that disconnect can never happen. Never, 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 never. And I don't know if I can say anything else with this much certainty that the connection to God, to the source, to the ultimate creator, to the cosmos, to the universe, to Mother Nature, to any of that, it can never be severed, even though in our darkest and angriest and most sad of times, it can seem like that tie can be severed. There's an etheric, unbreakable cord there, and it can never be broken. We are part of that source. Like I've said in the show before, Anne Rice's great saying, if God is the fire, we are all little flames. And that is so poignantly true. We are all sums of the whole. And the universe truly wouldn't be the same without one of us. You are here for a reason. Society goes out of its way because we have a great deal of controllers in society. And society goes right out of its way to make you believe that you are nothing. Do you really believe that you're all that television says you are? And I don't. I've come to the point where I realize that that's all a bunch of crap. We have politicians telling us that we're red or blue, that we're Democrat or Republican, that we're liberal or conservative. We have priests telling us that we need to turn to a higher power, that we are powerless without our higher power. This is untrue, and this is constantly happening in our society. You have it when you see a child breaking down the veil and talking to someone that, say, for example, an adult who obviously isn't connected the way a child is, can't see or can't hear. And when the child explains, this is my friend, fill in the blank, he said that blah, blah, blah. You tend to have a parent saying, that's just your imagination, honey. And after a few years, what happens? The child conforms. The child doesn't stay on this spiritual, beautiful path where he remembers his past lives, where he has that opening, where he has that connection to beyond the veil. Children, and same as animals, are conductors of this energy, and if you continually browbeat them and berate them and tell them it's just your imagination, it shuts down that conduit. And we need that conduit because it brings that innocence and it brings knowledge into us. I truly don't think that the adults know more than the children. I really believe it's the other way around, that we can learn from the children and not so much the other way. And I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I mean, that's what happens with me. But I'm actually, I'm going very freeform today. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. So I'm kind of just going off in all these different directions. We are so much greater than what we have been led to believe. And I think that should be a focus for every episode. The body itself is this incredible machine, but there is so much more happening behind the machine. What powers the machine? Thoughts aren't physical things. They can become physical things. They can manifest into a certain reality, but they aren't physical things to begin with. So where are the thoughts coming from? There are so many questions connected to where we've actually come from. And the fact that if you look into whistleblower testimony, there's nothing but evidence to support the fact that so many of our textbooks and our teachings, quote unquote teachings, are false. There's that old saying, history was written by the winner. And I think that there's so much more to that than even that. Does that make sense? So today we're looking into, I guess, looking beyond the veil, talking a bit about where I've come from as a person and how I've looked beyond the veil. I've had many experiences of seeing beyond the veil, spirit experiences, extraterrestrial experiences, past life experiences, and maybe I should get into that. As a child, I had absolutely no problem in recognizing and acknowledging that we are so much more than this, that I really am this powerful little being. And as a kid, I knew what an ET was before anybody explained alien to me. And as an interesting anecdote, I remember when I was about 7 years old, I remember sitting on the floor of my grandmother's trailer, and the TV was off in front of me, but I was just sitting there staring at my hands. And the only thing that I remember from this experience was staring at the front of my hands, the palms, and then turning them over and staring at the back and staring at the palms again and then turning them over and staring at the back. And I was so confused because these hands weren't mine. And, I found myself thinking, these hands are supposed to be old. I expected to see weathered, wrinkled, old man hands. And then I also thought, and they're supposed to be blue. I expected them to be this bright, vibrant blue. And it wasn't until I was about 25 years old that I finally accepted, that's the only word that works, that I finally accepted that this is actually who I am right now. And that I finally accepted that the physical skin that's actually on my body is mine. I'm not stuck in a different place now that I'm not supposed to be. Now, this kind of ties in with things that I've learned since about, for example, like Dolores Cannon's work, looking into volunteer souls and walk-in souls. And the short version of that story, and I might get some of it wrong, so I highly suggest that you go check out Dolores Cannon's stuff, because she's fabulous. This really ties in with what she talks about, and what she basically says, and again, I might get this wrong by a little bit, is that at a certain point, because ETs could see where Earth was heading, and it's not a positive place. A call was sent out, basically, out into the cosmos to say, planet Earth needs our help. You know, we need to have people coming in and incarnating onto Terra 3, and that will help things. That will help speed up the consciousness process. Which, if you're into any of this stuff, you realize has definitely been happening. Definitely the last 15 or so years, and easily since the 60s, you know, people have really been connecting a lot more to that aspect of themselves, the part that isn't just about war and money and greed and suffering. And it's all about peace, man. You know, so peace and love. So, you know, her work is very, very interesting. And it talks about how this call was put out. And there were certain extraterrestrial groups and certain individual extraterrestrials who said that they didn't want anything to do with it because Earth has made its own bed. You know, let Earth sleep in it kind of thing, right? And, but there were some, even so, that decided to be volunteer souls, to be walk-ins. And the way that I understand it is that when the baby is growing within the mother's womb, when the soul actually does come in, and it's a human soul to begin with, if a walk-in is about to come in, a walk-in will, you know, I'm being very colloquial, a walk-in will come in and say to the human soul, pack your stuff and get out. This is my place now, kind of thing, right? But it's a little kinder than that. I think, you know, obviously since it's done in the spirit plane, you know, there's a lot more understanding there, you know, so a human soul, unlike a human person, is not going to be jealous or dejected or rejected or, you know, like, but that was my body, you know, just find something else. And another thing that I've read since then is also that these walk-ins and volunteers can sometimes come in during, like after the birth, where you could even be 15 years old and your soul gets switched. And that's not a creepy possession thing. And, you know, people have seen, you know, friends or family members completely change overnight just with a snap, you know, and, well, I should say with like a blink of an eye, because I don't mean a snap in a mental way. But all of a sudden these people are changing. And, you know, with Dolores Cannon's work, she gets into regression. That's where she comes from. People who have been abducted, people who have had extraterrestrial experience, and she regresses them to take them back to that point. And all of her experiences so far have been very positive ones. Even the ones that seem negative were positive in the sense that the people didn't, or the beings didn't want any harm to befall us, even though they may have been strapping us down to a table and taking sperm and, you know, egg samples and stuff. But again, I'm not like 100% because I haven't delved 100% into Dolores's work. So I highly recommend you check out anything that she's ever done. I know that Project Camelot has done at least one interview with her, and I'm sure, oh yeah, she has. She's been on Coast to Coast with George Norrie like numerous times, as far as I remember. But yeah, so knowing that, learning that years later, after sitting on my grandmother's trailer floor and staring at my hands and expecting old weathered blue hands, it really opened my eyes, you know, to this whole conversation about volunteer souls and walk-in souls. And then after that, you know, ultimately you end up learning about indigo children, crystal children, rainbow children, star seeds, you know, light workers, light warriors, rainbow warriors. You know, we have all these names.